The Bottle Imp by Robert Louis Stevenson. There was a man of the island of Hawaii, whom I shall call Kiwi, for the truth is, he still lives, and his name must be kept secret. But the place of his birth was not far from Hanaunau, where the bones of Kiwi the Great lie hidden in a cave. The man was poor, brave, and active. He could read and write like a schoolmaster. He was a first-rate mariner besides, sailed for some time in the island steamers, and steered a whaleboat on the Kamakua coast. At length, it came in Kiwi's mind to have a sight of the great world and foreign cities, and he shipped on a vessel bound to San Francisco. This is a fine town, with a fine harbor, and rich people uncountable, and, in particular, there is one hill which is covered with palaces. Upon this hill Kiwi was one day taking a walk, with his pocket full of money, viewing the great houses upon either hand with pleasure. What fine houses there are, he was thinking, and how happy must these people be who dwell in them, and take no care for the morrow. The thought was in his mind when he came abreast of a house that was smaller than some others, but all finished and beautified like a toy. The steps of that house shone like silver, and the borders of the garden bloomed like garlands, and the windows were bright like diamonds. And Kiwi stopped and wondered at the excellence of all he saw. So stopping, he was aware of a man that looked forth upon him through a window, so clear that Kiwi could see him as you see a fish in a pool upon the reef. The man was elderly, with a bald head and a black beard, and his face was heavy with sorrow, and he bitterly sighed. And the truth of it is, that as Kiwi looked in upon the man, and the man looked out upon Kiwi, each envied the other. All of a sudden the man smiled and nodded, and beckoned Kiwi to enter, and met him at the door of the house. "This is a fine house of mine," said the man, and bitterly sighed. "Would you not care to view the chambers?" So he led Kiwi all over it, from the cellar to the roof, and there was nothing there that was not perfect of its kind, and Kiwi was astonished. "Truly," said Kiwi, "this is a beautiful house. If I lived in the like of it, I should be laughing all day long. How comes it, then, that you should be sighing?" "There is no reason," said the man, "why you should not have a house in all points similar to this, and finer, if you wish. You have some money, I suppose?" "I have $50, said Kiwi. "But a house like this will cost more than $50. The man made a computation. "I am sorry you have no more," said he, "for it may raise you trouble in the future, but it shall be yours at $50. "The house?" asked Kiwi. "No, not the house," replied the man, "but the bottle." For I must tell you, although I appear to you so rich and fortunate, all my fortune and this house itself and its garden came out of a bottle not much bigger than a pint. This is it." And he opened a lock-fast place and took out a round-bellied bottle with a long neck. The glass of it was white like milk, with changing rainbow colors in the grain. Within sides, something obscurely moved, like a shadow and a fire. "This is the bottle," said the man, and when Kiwi laughed, "You do not believe me?" he added. "Try then for yourself. See if you can break it." So Kiwi took the bottle up and dashed it on the floor till he was weary, but it jumped on the floor like a child's ball and was not injured. "This is a strange thing," said Kiwi, "for by the touch of it, as well as by the look, the bottle should be of glass." "Of glass it is," replied the man, sighing more heavily than ever. "But the glass of it was tempered in the flames of hell. An imp lives in it, and that is the shadow we behold there moving, or so I suppose. If any man buy this bottle, the imp is at his command. All that he desires, love, fame, money, houses like this house, aye, or a city like this city, all are his at the word uttered. Napoleon had this bottle, and by it he grew to be the king of the world. But he sold it at the last and fell. Captain Cook had this bottle, and by it he found his way to so many islands. But he too sold it, and was slain upon Hawaii. For once it is sold, the power goes and the protection, and unless a man remain content with what he has, ill will befall him. And yet you talk of selling it yourself," Kiwi said. "I have all I wish, and I'm growing elderly," replied the man. "There is one thing the imp cannot do. He cannot prolong life, and it would not be fair to conceal from you there is a drawback to the bottle. For if a man die before he sells it, he must burn in hell forever." "To be sure, that is a drawback, and no mistake," cried Kiwi. "I would not meddle with the thing. I can do without a house, thank God, but there is one thing I could not be doing with one particle, and that is to be damned." "Dear me, you must not run away with things," returned the man. "All you have to do is to use the power of the imp in moderation, and then sell it to someone else, as I do to you, and finish your life in comfort." "Well, I observe two things," said Kiwi. "All the time you keep sighing like a maid in love. That is one, and for the other, you sell this bottle very cheap." "I have told you already why I sigh," said the man. "It is because I fear my health is breaking up, and as you said yourself, to die and go to the devil is a pity for anyone. As for why I sell so cheap, I must explain to you. There is a peculiarity about the bottle. Long ago, when the devil brought it first upon the earth, it was extremely expensive, and was sold first of all to the Prester John for many millions of dollars. But it cannot be sold at all unless sold at a loss. If you sell it for as much as you paid for it, back it comes to you again like a homing pigeon. It follows that the price has kept falling in these centuries, and the bottle is now remarkably cheap. I bought it myself from one of my great neighbors on this hill, and the price I paid was only $90. I could sell it for as high as $89.99, but not a penny dearer, or back the thing must come to me. Now about this there are two bothers. First, when you offer a bottle so singular for $80 odd, people suppose you to be jesting. And second, but there is no hurry about that, and I need not go into it. Only remember, it must be coined money, and that you sell it for. How am I to know that this is all true? Asked Kiwi. Some of it you can try at once, replied the man. Give me your $50. Take the bottle and wish your $50 back into your pocket. If that does not happen, I pledge you my honor, I will cry off the bargain and restore your money. You're not deceiving me? Said Kiwi. The man bound himself with a great oath. Well, I will risk that much, said Kiwi, for that can do no harm. And he paid over his money to the man, and the man handed him the bottle. Imp of the bottle, said Kiwi, I want my $50 back. And sure enough, he had scarce said the word before his pocket was as heavy as ever. To be sure, this is a wonderful bottle, said Kiwi. And now, good morning to you, my fine fellow, and the devil go with you for me, said the man. Hold on, said Kiwi. I don't want any more of this fun. Here, take your bottle back. You have bought it for less than I paid for it, replied the man, rubbing his hands. It is yours now, and for my part, I am only concerned to see the back of you. And with that he rang for his Chinese servant, and had Kiwi shown out of the house. Now when Kiwi was in the street, with the bottle under his arm, he began to think. If all this is true about this bottle, I may have made a losing bargain, thinks he. But perhaps the man was only fooling me. The first thing he did was to count his money. The sum was exact, $49 American money, and 1 Chili piece. That looks like the truth, said Kiwi. Now I will try another part. The streets in that part of the city were as clean as a ship's deck, and though it was noon, there were no passengers. Kiwi set the bottle in the gutter and walked away. Twice he looked back, and there was the milky, round-bellied bottle where he left it. A third time he looked back and turned a corner, but he had scarce done so when something knocked upon his elbow, and behold, it was the long neck sticking up, and as for the round belly, it was jammed into the pocket of his pilot coat. "And that looks like the truth," said Kiwi. The next thing he did was to buy a corkscrew in a shop and go apart in a secret place in the fields. And there he tried to draw the cork. But as often as he put the screw in, out it came again, and the cork was as whole as ever. "This is some new sort of cork," said Kiwi, and all at once he began to shake and sweat, for he was afraid of that bottle. On his way back to the port side, he saw a shop where a man sold shells and clubs from the wild islands, old heathen deities, old coined money, pictures from China and Japan, and all manner of things that sailors bring in their sea chests. And here he had an idea. So he went in and offered the bottle for $100. The man of the shop laughed at him at first and offered him 5. But indeed, it was a curious bottle. Such glass was never blown in any human glass works. So prettily the colors shone. So prettily the colors shone under the Milky Way, and so strangely the shadow hovered in the midst. So after he had disputed a while after the manner of his kind, the shopman gave Kiwi 60 silver dollars for the thing, and set it on a shelf in the midst of his window. "Now," said Kiwi, "I have sold that for 60, which I bought for 50, or to say truth, a little less, because one of my dollars was from Chile. Now I shall know the truth upon another point." So he went back on board his ship, and when he opened his chest, there was the bottle, which had come more quickly than himself. Now Kiwi had a mate on board, whose name was Lopaka. "What ails you?" said Lopaka, "that you stare in your chests?" They were alone in the ship's forecastle, and Kiwi bound him to secrecy and told all. "This is a very strange affair," said Lopaka, "and I fear you will be in trouble about this bottle. But there is one point very clear, that you are sure of the trouble, and you had better have the profit in the bargain. Make up your mind what you want with it. Give the order, and it is done as you desire. I will buy the bottle myself, for I have an idea of my own to get a schooner, and go trading through the islands." "That is not my idea," said Kiwi, "but to have a beautiful house and garden on the Kona coast, where I was born, the sun shining in at the door, flowers in the garden, glass in the windows, pictures on the walls, and toys and fine carpets on the tables, for all the world like the house I was in this day, only a story higher, and with balconies all about like the king's palace, and to live there without care, and make merry with my friends and relatives." "Well," said Lopaka, "let us carry it back with us to Hawaii, and if all comes true as you suppose, I will buy the bottle, as I said, and ask a schooner." Upon that they were agreed, and it was not long before the ship returned to Honolulu, carrying Kiwi and Lopaka and the bottle. They were scarce come ashore when they met a friend upon the beach, who began at once to condole with Kiwi. I do not know what I am to be condoled about, said Kiwi. It is possible you have not heard, said the friend. Your uncle, that good old man, is dead, and your cousin, that beautiful boy, was drowned at sea. Kiwi was filled with sorrow, and beginning to weep and to lament, he forgot about the bottle. But Lopaka was thinking to himself, and presently, when Kiwi's grief was a little abated, I have been thinking, said Lopaka. Had not your uncle lands in Hawaii in the district of Kau? No, said Kiwi, not in Kau. They are on the mountainside, a little be south, Kukina. These lands will now be yours, asked Lopaka. And so they will, says Kiwi, and began again to lament for his relatives. And no, said Lopaka, do not lament at present. I have a thought in my mind, how if this should be the doing of the bottle? For here is the place ready for your house. If this be so, cried Kiwi, it is a very ill way to serve me by killing my relatives. But it may be, indeed, for it was in just such a station that I saw the house with my mind's eye. The house, however, is not yet built, said Lopaka. No, nor like to be, said Kiwi. For though my uncle has some coffee and ava and bananas, it will not be more than will keep me in comfort, and the rest of that land is the black lava. Let us go to the lawyer, said Lopaka. I have still this idea in my mind. Now, when they came to the lawyer's, it appeared Kiwi's uncle had grown monstrous rich in the last days, and there was a fund of money. And here is the money for the house, cried Lopaka. If you are thinking of a new house, said the lawyer, here is the card of a new architect, of whom they tell me great things. Better and better, cried Lopaka. Here is all made plain for us. Let us continue to obey orders. So they went to the architect, and he had drawings of houses on his table. You want something out of the way, said the architect. How do you like this? And he handed a drawing to Kiwi. And now when Kiwi set eyes on the drawing, he cried out aloud, for it was the picture of his thought exactly drawn. I am in for this house, thought he. Little as I liked the way it comes to me, I am in for it now, and I may as well take the good along with the evil. So he told the architect all that he wished, and how he would have that house furnished, and about the pictures on the wall, and the knickknacks on the tables, and he asked the man plainly for how much he would undertake the whole affair. The architect put many questions, and took his pen, and made a computation, and when he had done, he named the very sum that Kiwi had inherited. Lopaka and Kiwi looked at one another and nodded. It is quite clear, thought Kiwi, that I am to have this house, whether or no. It comes from the devil, and I fear I will get a little good by that. And of one thing I am sure, I will make no more wishes as long as I have this bottle. I am saddled, and I may as well take the good along with the evil. So he made his terms with the architect, and they signed a paper. And Kiwi and Lopaka took ship again and sailed to Australia, for it was concluded between them they should not interfere at all, but leave the architect and the bottle imp to build and to adorn the house at their own pleasure. The voyage was a good voyage, only all the time Kiwi was holding in his breath, for he had sworn he would utter no more wishes, and take no more favors from the devil. The time was up when they got back. The architect told them that the house was ready, and Kiwi and Lopaka took a passage in the hall, and went down Kona Way to view the house, and see if all had been done fitly according to the thought that was in Kiwi's mind. Now the house stood on the mountainside, visible to ships. Above, the forest ran up into the clouds of rain. Below, the black lava fell in cliffs, where the kings of old lay buried. A garden bloomed about the house with every hue of flowers, and there was an orchard of papaya on one hand, and an orchard of breadfruit on the other. And right in front, towards the sea, a ship's mast had been rigged up and bore a flag. As for the house, it was 3 stories high, with great chambers and broad balconies on each. The windows were of glass, so excellent that it was as clear as water, and as bright as day. All manner of furniture adorned the chambers. Pictures hung upon the wall in golden frames, pictures of ships and men fighting, and of the most beautiful women, and of singular places. Nowhere in the world are there pictures of so bright a color as those Kiwi found hanging in his house. As for the knickknacks, they were extraordinarily fine. Chiming clocks and musical boxes, little men with nodding heads, books filled with pictures, weapons of price from all quarters of the world, and the most elegant puzzles to entertain the leisure of a solitary man. And as no one would care to live in such chambers, only to walk through and view them, the balconies were made so broad that the whole town might have lived upon them in delight, and Kiwi knew not which to prefer, whether the back porch, where you get the land breeze and looked upon the orchards and the flowers, or the front balcony, where you could drink the wind of the sea and look down the steep wall of the mountain and see the hall going by once a week or so between Hukina and the hills of Pele, or the schooners plying up the coast for wood and ava and bananas. When they had viewed all, Kiwi and Lopaka sat on the porch. "Well," asked Lopaka, "is it all as you designed?" "Words cannot utter it," said Kiwi. "It is better than I dreamed, and I am sick with satisfaction. There is but one thing to consider," said Lopaka. "All this may be quite natural, and the bottle imp have nothing whatever to say about it. If I were to buy the bottle, and got no schooner after all, I should have put my hand in the fire for nothing. I gave you my word, I know, but yet I think you would not grudge me one more proof." "I have sworn I would take no more favors," said Kiwi. I have gone already deep enough." "This is no favor I am thinking of," replied Lopaka. "It is only to see the imp himself. There is nothing to be gained by that, and so nothing to be ashamed of. And yet, if I once saw him, I should be sure of the whole matter. So indulge me so far, and let me see the imp. And after that, here is the money in my hand, and I will buy it." "There is only one thing I am afraid of," said Kiwi. "The imp may be very ugly to view, and if you once set eyes upon him, you might be very undesirous of the bottle." "I am a man of my word," said Lopaka, "and here is the money betwixt us." "Very well," replied Kiwi. "I have a curiosity myself. So come, let us have one look at you, Mr. Imp." Now as soon as that was said, the imp looked out of the bottle, and in again, swift as a lizard, and there sat Kiwi and Lopaka, turned to stone. The night had quite come before either found a thought to say or voices to say it with. And then Lopaka pushed the money over and took the bottle. "I am a man of my word," he said, "and had need to be so, or I would not touch this bottle with my foot. Well, I shall get my schooner, and $1 or two for my pocket, and then I will be rid of this devil as fast as I can. For to tell you the plain truth, the look of him has cast me down." "Lopaka," said Kiwi, "do not you think any worse of me than you can help. I know it is night, and the roads bad, and the pass by the tombs an ill place to go by so late. But I declare, since I have seen that little face, I cannot eat or sleep or pray till it is gone from me. I will give you a lantern and a basket to put the bottle in, and any picture or fine thing in all my house that takes your fancy, and be gone at once, and go sleep at Hukina with Nahinu." "Kiwi," said Lopaka, "many a man would take this ill, above all when I am doing you a turn so friendly, as to keep my word and buy the bottle, and for that matter, the night and the dark and the way by the tombs must be all tenfold more dangerous to a man with such a sin upon his conscience and such a bottle under his arm. But for my part, I am so extremely terrified myself, I have not the heart to blame you. Here I go, then, and I pray God you may be happy in your house, and I fortunate with my schooner, and both get to heaven in the end in spite of the devil and his bottle." So Lopaka went down the mountain, and Kiwi stood in his front balcony, and listened to the clink of the horses' shoes, and watched the lantern go shining down the path, and along the cliff of caves where the old dead are buried. And all the time he trembled and clasped his hands, and prayed for his friend, and gave glory to God that he himself was escaped out of that trouble. But the next day came very brightly, and that new house of his was so delightful to behold that he forgot his terrors. One day followed another, and Kiwi dwelt there in perpetual joy. He had his place on the back porch. It was there he ate and lived, and read the stories in the Honolulu newspapers. But when anyone came by, they would go in and view the chambers and the pictures. And the fame of the house went far and wide. It was called Kahele Nu, the Great House, in all Kona, and sometimes the Bright House, for Kiwi kept a Chinaman who was all day dusting and furbishing, and the glass, and the gilt, and the fine stuffs, and the pictures, shone as bright as the morning. As for Kiwi himself, he could not walk in the chambers without singing. His heart was so enlarged, and when ships sailed by upon the sea, he would fly his colors on the mast. So time went by, until one day Kiwi went upon a visit as far as Kailua to certain of his friends. There he was well feasted, and left as soon as he could the next morning, and rode hard, for he was impatient to behold his beautiful house, and besides, the night then coming on was the night in which the dead of old days go abroad in the sides of Kona, and having already meddled with the devil, he was the more chary of meeting with the dead. A little beyond Honaiuna, looking far ahead, he was aware of a woman bathing in the edges of the sea, and she seemed a well-grown girl, but he thought no more of it. Then he saw her white shift flutter as she put it on, and then her red holoku, and by the time he came abreast of her, she was done with her toilet, and had come up from the sea, and stood by the track side in her red holoko, and she was all freshened with the bath, and her eyes shone and were kind. Now Kiwi no sooner beheld her than he drew rein. "I thought I knew everyone in this country," said he. "How comes it that I do not know you?" "I am Kokua, a daughter of Kaiano," said the girl, "and I have just returned from Oahu. Who are you?" "I will tell you who I am in a little," said Kiwi, dismounting from his horse, "but not now, for I have a thought in my mind, and if you knew who I was, you might have heard of me and would not give me a true answer. But tell me first of all one thing. Are you married?" At this, Kokua laughed out loud. "It is you who ask questions," she said. "Are you married yourself?" "Indeed, Kokua, I am not," replied Kiwi, "and never thought to be until this hour. But here is the plain truth. I have met you here at the roadside, and I saw your eyes, which are like the stars, and my heart went to you as swift as a bird. And so now, if you want none say of me, say so, and I will go on to my own place. But if you think me no worse than any other young man, say so too, and I will turn aside to your father's for the night, and tomorrow I will talk with the good man." Kokua said never a word, but she looked at the sea and laughed. "Kokua," said Kiwi, "if you say nothing, I will take that for the good answer. So let us be stepping to your father's door." She went on ahead of him, still without speech, only sometimes she glanced back and glanced away again, and she kept the strings of her hat in her mouth. Now, when they had come to the door, Kaiano came out on his veranda, and carried out and welcomed Kiwi by name. At that the girl looked over, for the fame of the great house had come to her ears, and to be sure, it was a great temptation. All that evening they were very merry together, and the girl was as bold as brass under the eyes of her parents, and made a mark of Kiwi, for she had a quick wit. The next day he had a word with Kiano, and found the girl alone. "Kukua," said he, "you made a mark of me all the evening, and it is still time to bid me go. I would not tell you who I was, because I have so fine a house, and I feared you would think too much of that house, and too little of the man that loves you. Now you know all, and if you wish to have seen the last of me, say so at once." "No," said Kukua, but this time she did not laugh, nor did Kiwi ask for more. This was the wooing of Kiwi. Things had gone quickly, but so an arrow goes, and the ball of a rifle swifter still, and yet both may strike the target. Things had gone fast, but they had gone far also, and the thought of Kiwi's rang in the maiden's head. She heard his voice in the breach of the surf upon the lava, and for this young man that she had seen but twice, she would have left father and mother and her native islands. As for Kiwi himself, his horse flew up the path of the mountain under the cliff of tombs, and the sound of the hoofs, and the sound of Kiwi singing to himself for pleasure, echoed in the caverns of the dead. He came to the bright house, and still he was singing. He sat and ate in the broad balcony, and the Chinaman wondered at his master to hear how he sang between the mouthfuls. The sun went down into the sea, and the night came, and Kiwi walked the balconies by lamplight, high on the mountains, and the voice of his singing startled men on ships. "Here am I now upon my high place," he said to himself. "Life may be no better. This is the mountain top, and all shelves about me towards the worse. For the first time I will light up the chambers, and bathe in my fine bath, with the hot water and the cold, and sleep above in the bed of my bridal chamber." So the Chinaman had word, and he must rise from sleep and light the furnaces. And as he walked below, beside the boilers, he heard his master singing and rejoicing above him in the lighted chambers. When the water began to be hot, the Chinaman cried to his master, and Kiwi went into the bathroom, and the Chinaman heard him sing as he filled the marble basin, and heard him sing, and the singing broken as he undressed, until of a sudden the song ceased. The Chinaman listened and listened. He called up the house to Kiwi to ask if all were well, and Kiwi answered him yes, and bade him go to bed. But there was no more singing in the bright house, and all night long the Chinaman heard his master's feet go round and round the balconies without repose. Now the truth of it was this: as Kiwi undressed for his bath, he espied upon his flesh a patch like a patch of lichen on a rock, and it was then that he stopped singing, for he knew the likeness of that patch, and he knew that he was fallen in the Chinese evil. Now, it is a sad thing for any man to fall into this sickness. Footnote: leprosy. End of footnote. And it would be a sad thing for anyone to leave a house so beautiful and so commodious, and depart from all his friends to the north coast of Molokai, between the muddy cliff and the sea breakers. But what was that to the case of the man Kiwi, he who had met his love but yesterday, and won her but that morning, and now saw all his hopes break in a moment, like a piece of glass? A while he sat upon the edge of the bath, then sprang with a cry, and ran outside, and to and fro, along the balcony, like one despairing. Very willingly could I leave Hawaii, the home of my fathers, Kiwi was thinking. Very lightly could I leave my house, the high place, the many-windowed, here upon the mountains. Very bravely could I go to Molokai, to Kalaupapa, by the cliffs, to live with the smitten, and to sleep there, far from my fathers. But what wrong have I done? What sin lies upon my soul, that I should have encountered Kokua coming cool from the sea-water in the evening? Kokua, the soul ensnarer. Kokua, the light of my life. Her may I never wed. Her may I look upon no longer. Her may I no more handle with my loving hand. And it is for this, it is for you, O Kokua, that I pour my lamentations. Now you are to observe what sort of man Kiwi was, for he might have dwelt there in the bright house for years, and no one been the wiser of his sickness. But he reckoned nothing of that, if he must lose Kokua. And again he might have wed Kokua, even as he was, and so many would have done, because they have the souls of pigs. But Kiwi loved the maid manfully, and he would do her no hurt and bring her in no danger. A little beyond the midst of the night, there came in his mind the recollection of that bottle. He went round to the back porch and called to memory the day when the devil had looked forth, and at the thought ice ran in his veins. A dreadful thing is in the bottle, thought Kiwi, and dreadful is the imp, and it is a dreadful thing to risk the flames of hell. But what other hope have I to cure my sickness, or to wed Kokua? What, he thought, would I beard the devil once, only to get me a house, and not face him again to win Kokua? Thereupon he called to mind, it was the next day the Hall went by, on her return to Honolulu. There must I go first, he thought, and see Lopaka, for the best hope that I have now is to find that same bottle I was so pleased to be rid of. Never a wink could he sleep. The food stuck in his throat, and he sent a letter to Keanu, and about the time when the steamer would be coming, rode down beside the cliff of the tombs. It rained. His horse went heavily. He looked up at the black mouths of the caves, and he envied the dead that slept there and were done with trouble, and called to mind how he had galloped by the day before and was astonished. So he came down to Hukina, and there was all the country gathered for the steamer as usual. In the shed before the store they sat and jested and passed the news, but there was no matter of speech in Kiwi's bosom, and he sat in their midst and looked without on the rain falling on the houses, and the surf beating among the rocks, and the sighs arose in his throat. Kiwi of the bright house is out of spirits, said one to another. Indeed, and so he was, and little wonder. Then the haul came, and the whaleboat carried him on board. The after part of the ship was full of haoles. Footnote. Whites. End of footnote. Who had been to visit the volcano, as their custom is, and the midst was crowded with Kanakas, and the forepart with wild bulls from Hilo, and horses from Keu. But Kiwi sat apart from all in his sorrow, and watched for the house of Kiano. There it sat, low upon the shore, in the black rocks, and shaded by the cocoa palms, and there by the door was a red haloku, no greater than a fly, and going to and fro with a fly's busyness. Ah, queen of my heart, he cried, I'll venture my dear soul to win you. Soon after darkness fell, and the cabins were lit up, and the haoles sat and played at the cards and drank whiskey, as their custom is. But Kiwi walked the deck all night, and all the next day, as they steamed under the lee of Maui, or of Molokai. He was still pacing, to and fro, like a wild animal in a menagerie. Towards evening, they passed Diamond Head, and came to the pier of Honolulu. Kiwi stepped out among the crowd and began to ask for Lopaka. It seemed he had become the owner of a schooner, none better in the islands, and was gone upon an adventure as far as Pola Pola, or Kahiki, so there was no help to be looked for from Lopaka. Kiwi called to mind a friend of his, a lawyer in the town. I must not tell his name, and inquired of him. They said he was grown suddenly rich, and had a fine new house upon Waikiki shore. And this put a thought in Kiwi's head, and he called a hack and drove to the lawyer's house. The house was all brand new, and the trees in the garden no greater than walking sticks. And the lawyer, when he came, had the air of a man well pleased. "What can I do to serve you?" said the lawyer. "You are a friend of Lopaka's," replied Kiwi, "and Lopaka purchased from me a certain piece of goods, and I thought you might enable me to trace." The lawyer's face became very dark. "I do not profess to misunderstand you, Mr. Kiwi," said he, "though this is an ugly business to be stirring in. You may be sure I know nothing, but yet I have a guess, and if you would apply in a certain quarter, I think you might have news." And he named the name of a man, which again I had better not repeat. So it was for days, and Kiwi went from one to another, finding everywhere new clothes and carriages, and fine new houses, and men everywhere in great contentment. Although, to be sure, when he hinted at his business, their faces would cloud over. "No doubt I am upon the track," thought Kiwi. "These new clothes and carriages are all the gifts of the little imp, and these glad faces are the faces of men who have taken their profit and got rid of the cursed thing in safety. When I see pale cheeks and hear sighing, I shall know that I am near the bottle." So it befell at last he was recommended to the Haole in Beretania Street. When he came to the door, about the hour of the evening meal, there were the usual marks of the new house,
and the young garden, and the electric light shining in the windows. But when the owner came, a shock of hope and fear ran through Kiwi, for here was a young man, white as a corpse, and black about the eyes, the hair shedding from his head, and such a look in his countenance as a man may have when he is waiting for the gallows. Here it is, to be sure, thought Kiwi, and so with this man he no ways veiled his errand. "I am come to buy the bottle," said he. At the word, the young Haoli of Beretania Street reeled against the wall. "The bottle!" he gasped. "To buy the bottle!" Then he seemed to choke, and seizing Kiwi by the arm, carried him into a room and poured out wine in 2 glasses. "Here's my respects," said Kiwi, who had been much about with Haolis in his time. "Yes," he added, "I am come to buy the bottle. What is the price by now?" At that word, the young man let his glass slip through his fingers, and looked upon Kiwi like a ghost. "The price," says he, "the price! You do not know the price?" "It is for that I am asking you," returned Kiwi. "But why are you so much concerned? Is there anything wrong about the price?" "It has dropped a great deal in value since your time, Mr. Kiwi," said the young man, stammering. "Well, well, I shall have the less to pay for it," said Kiwi. "How much did it cost you?" The young man was as white as a ghost. 2 cents, said he. "What?" cried Kiwi. 2 cents. "Why, then, you can only sell it for 1, and he who buys it—" The words died upon Kiwi's tongue. He who bought it could never sell it again. The bottle and the bottle imp must abide with him until he died, and when he died must carry him to the red end of hell. The young man of Beretania Street fell upon his knees. "For God's sake, buy it!" he cried. "You can have all my fortune in the bargain. I was mad when I bought it at that price. I had embezzled money at my store. I was lost else. I must have gone to jail." "Poor creature," said Kiwi. "You should risk your soul upon so desperate an adventure, and to avoid the proper punishment of your own disgrace, and you think I could hesitate with love in front of me. Give me the bottle, and the change, which I make sure you have already. Here is a 5-cent piece." It was as Kiwi supposed. The young man had the change ready in a drawer. The bottle changed hands, and Kiwi's fingers were no sooner clasped upon the stalk than he had breathed his wish to be a clean man. And sure enough, when he got home to his room and stripped himself before a glass, his flesh was whole like an infant's. And there was the strange thing, he had no sooner seen this miracle than his mind was changed within him, and he cared not for the Chinese evil, and a little enough for Kakua, and had but the one thought, that here he was bound to the bottle imp for time and for eternity, and had no better hope but to be a cinder forever in the flames of hell. Away ahead of him he saw them blaze with his mind's eye, and his soul shrank, and darkness fell upon the light.